Hello everyone, welcome back to AppDev channel. As part of servers and events approach implementation in order to achieve the asynchronous communication between the client and backend processes or services, right? We have started that using the AWS SQS and the Spring Boot microservices. So as part of this particular video series, until now we have completed the job submit API and the job submit API creating an SQS and the job submit API calling the backend API RESTful web service and the backend API pushing the messages to the SQS whenever there is a job status update. So all these steps we have completed till now, right? So in today's video, what we are going to do, uh, whatever the message that has been put by the backend system or the job process API into the SQS, till now no one is listening to that SQS. So what we are going to do in today's video, the job submit API is going to open up a listener to this SQS, and whenever there is a message in SQS, it will read that messages asynchronously. Okay, that part we are going to do in today's video. Okay, so let's start doing that. So let me go to our client project. So in client project, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a service. Okay, so we are already having one service, right? The job submit service. Okay. Similar to that, what I will do, I'll create one more service, the job update service. Okay, class. So this is about the job updates, right? So that's why I'm going to create a job updates service. As usual, I'm going to maintain this with the add service. Okay. So what this service has to do, this service has to create a thread. Okay. That thread should be running independently after the job submission acknowledgement is received from the backend API, right? That thread should be started. That thread should be started and that thread should be opening up a listener to the SQS that it has created during the submission process. So that's the main intention of this service which we are going to build. Okay. So for that, what we do, uh, we will create a thread. Okay, like yeah, here job SQS watcher is my thread. Okay, job SQS or job updates watcher, okay, whatever it is. Job updates watcher is my thread class. So in job updates watcher, what I'm going to do, I want this class to be running as thread, right? So I have to implement the run method. But I'm going to write a constructor in it. So what it is going to do, it is going to take user ID, job name, and the queue name as well. And it will be okay. So it is what it is going to do, it is going to assign some data to the class properties. What are the class properties? Okay, private string, user ID, job name, and the queue name. Okay, this dot user ID, this dot job name, this dot queue name, queue name. Okay, So we got the data. I mean, this one we are going to call it from the service layer, right? That's a job update service. So that service will be having a data that who the user submitted the job and what job submitted and what is the queue created for it. So that service will be calling this thread. So thread will be having to which queue it has to open up the connection, asynchronous connection, right? So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another class. Okay. Um, yeah, job updates util. Okay, job updates util is my class here. Okay, so here this job updates util, I don't want to maintain. I don't want to maintain multiple instances for this job updates util. So I'm going to create a constructor for it, or a singleton method. Okay, which is going to ensure that this class will be created only one instance for this class. Get singleton ref. Okay, so if job updates util, okay, is equal to null, then only I'm going to create. I mean, there are other steps that we have to use, right, in order to make this class as singleton, but for simplicity purpose I'm not going to implement all of them, but for an example purpose, as we are using it, right, job updates util, I'm just taking this one single step to implement this class as a singleton. Okay, private job updates util. Okay, okay, so this is going to return job updates util. Okay, so when I have this method, right, so what I will be having, I have to create a, I have to call a listener, message listener. Here I am going to use the Java JMS API to open up a message listener, JMS message listener to the SQS. Okay, so here I'm going to start listening to the messages. Okay, and this method will be called from our the thread class, the watcher, whatever we created, right? Job updates watcher. Will from there I'm going to create this util. Okay, so string whatever the data, right? Who the user submitted, what is the job the user submitted, and what is the queue name the user, the queue that was created for the job. Okay, so here what we have to do, we have to make use of the SQS AWS SQS API for the JMS for the listeners, right? So we already have a listener for it already for SQS, but this is to uh, send messages or receive messages or whatever the operations that we can do, delete queue, all those things. For that only this is the dependency, but there is another dependency. If you want to use the connection listeners to the SQS, this dependency we have to use. So the dependency is, I'm going to write it now. Okay, so com dot Amazon AWS, that is the group ID. And what is the artifact ID? Amazon SQS Java messaging library. Okay, what is the version I'm going to use? I'm going to use 1.0.4. Okay, type also I have to mention because I want the jar. Okay, so this is the library which we are going to use to open up the JMS listener to your SQS. Okay, so start listening to messages, right? There will be one class that we have to initiate to open up the connection listener to our SQS. Okay, that is SQS connection factory. Okay, uh, new SQS connection factory, and for this we have to provide the configuration. Okay, new provider configuration. After that, Amazon, what is the type of client builder which we are going to use? Amazon SQS client builder dot standard uh, client builder we are going to use. After that, what is the region which we want to connect? So with region. So region in the sense whatever the region we created our SQS, right? That region we have to connect. Okay. After the region, we have to pass the credentials, right? So with credentials, what we have to use for with credentials? We have to use the AWS static credential provider, and for that what we have to pass? We have to pass the basic AWS credentials, and to basic AWS credentials what we have to use. So our client ID and the secret access key, both of them are present in our app constants file, right, which we have used while creating the SQS. So that only we have to use now, app constants dot access key ID I'm going to use. Similarly, what I'm going to do, I have to use the secret access key, right? Okay, secret access key. Okay, so with that our SQS connection listener is ready. Okay, so there is a problem. Let's see that. Okay, cool. So connection factory is ready. But what we have to do for any user who has submitted the job, right? For that user, we have to create a connection. Okay, so SQS connection factory dot, there is a connection, create connection. This returns SQS connection. Okay, so this returns SQS connection, right? So this is the connection which we have to open for any user who submitted the job, right? Okay, so there is a problem. Let's see that. SQS connection. So what is the problem here? It is not, we should throw the JMS exception or something, right? What we will do, we will catch it. Okay. So this connection will be created for every user, right? So what we do, we will create a map That map will be holding the list of users on their particular connection. Okay, so private hash map string the user ID or whatever it is, okay, or the queue name, or we can use anything as a key, and the connection. Okay, so connections is the map that we are going to create, and this will be holding all user IDs on their connections. Okay, connections. So whenever there is a connection created, we will put that in the connections dot put of queue name. Yeah, we will use the queue name as the key and SQS connection that was created for that queue as a value into that map. Okay, now what we have to do, we have to use the JMS APIs to create the session, to create the message listener, all those things, right? Message consumers. Okay, so what we are going to do, uh, yeah, we have to first create session. Okay, that session we can create on SQS connection dot SQS connection dot. Okay, let me use this. We have to create a session, right? Yeah, create session is there. So there are a couple of arguments we have to pass, whether it supports the transactionals or the what is the acknowledgement mode we have to use. So all those things, right? Acknowledgement mode means auto acknowledge, client acknowledge, all unordered acknowledge, all those things are there. So for now, what we are going to use, we don't want any transacted messages, and also the acknowledgement mode will be like a session dot client acknowledge I'm going to use. Okay, okay, now the session is ready, but on session we have to create a consumer, so consumer only is going to listen. Okay, right? So what is the consumer? So session, so for what we are going to create the consumer, we are going to create a consumer for the queue, right? So queue name, so this is the queue name. Okay, so we have the consumer now. What is the consumer? Message consumer. Okay, now we have the consumer also ready, right? So there is a method consumer dot set message listener. Okay, so to this one we have to pass our own message listener. Okay, that message listener should be actually asynchronously listening to your SQS. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to create a message listener. Okay, so what is the message listener? Job updates receiver or something. Job updates receiver callback. Okay, that is the callback which I am going to create. Okay, what it will do, uh, it should be having the functionalities of the JMS message listener, right? So we have to have the implements uh, message listener. Okay, so we have to have override a method in that message listener interface, right? What is that? The on message. So whenever we open up a connection, whenever this callback is open a connection, right? Asynchronously listening for messages from the SQS. Whenever there is a message in the SQS, right, it will be read by this method. Okay. So let's stop this callback here and let's call it from here. Okay, so here what we have to do, we have to call that callback, right? So in our util class, we have to call that callback. We have to attach that callback, right? So job, what is that? Job updates receiver callback. So this is the callback. So for this callback, we have to pass, if at all we need to access the queue name, right? Queue name, user ID, job name, all those things. If at all we want to access in the callback, we can pass them here. Otherwise, not required. Okay. So let's pass it. Okay. Consumer dot set message listener should be after the callback is created, and that callback we have to pass it here. Okay. Now let me go to this. Okay. So we have created a constructor also here. So let me go here and watcher, right? Yeah. Let me add the same thing here. Okay, user ID, job name. Okay, this is the callback, right? User ID, job name, queue name. Those things I have to pass, right? So in the util also, okay. So my callback is also ready, at least the skeleton part. Okay. Now what I'll do, I'll go to callback and read the message, just a message. Okay. There are some classes available in the JMS, that is text message. If you are putting a message like text message, that we can use this one. So whatever the message that is being put by the backend process, it is a text message, right? So we want to read that as a text message. So that's why I'm converting that into the text message dot get text. Okay. So this is the message, actual message, right? Message body. Okay, whatever it is. So let me just print it and we will see what happens. Okay. Message received in the middleware. Okay. So this is the message body that we are receiving from the queue. So here is a problem. Let's see that what it is. Unhandled exception JMS type. That's fine. Okay. We are catching that exception and let's put this inside of the try block. Okay. So our callback that is listening for the messages is ready. Okay. And that callback we are setting as a message listener to the consumer, and that consumer is a consumer for the queue that we have created on which the session is created. Okay, this is the methods will be called when we want to start listening to the messages, right? So we are done. Okay, so we'll go to our watcher where we have opened up a thread, right? So here we have to call our util class where we want to start listening to the messages, right? Job updates util. Okay, this is the class that has we have to get the instance of the class, right? And then we have to call the start listening to messages, user ID, job name, queue name. This is the sequence we have to pass: user ID, job name, and queue name, right? That's how our method is defined. Okay, so here, so our watcher is also ready now. Now what we have to do, our job updates service, right? uh, okay, so what we will do, we will have a method here, uh, listen for updates. Okay, like this we will have a method, And for this method we will pass the user ID, job name, and the queue name. So this method is just a service method, right? So this method is just a service method and it has to call the watcher thread. Okay, so in order to call the watcher thread from here, new thread, new job updates watcher. Okay, further whatever the parameters we receive. Okay, so here we have to start the thread. Okay, so that's all. Okay, so this is going to start the thread, but this job update service we have to initiate from somewhere, right? What is that somewhere? That is the place we have to initiate once the acknowledgement is received. So where we receive the acknowledgement here, right? After the, this is the place where we receive the acknowledgement, right? So here the job updates service, we have to auto wire it here first. So let me come here, job updates service. Okay, job update service. So I have to call that method, the job update service, which is actually initiating the updates process. Okay, so user ID is here, job name is here, queue name is here, everything is here for me. Okay, so that's all. Okay, we are done. So let me restart the this particular client service. Okay, let me stop it first, and then start it. Now we have our client service running here. Okay, and this is our server project running here. It is already running. We have not made any code changes today to the server project, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to submit a job. Okay, app dev 1 and job 1, and this will be the dates. Okay, so app dev 1 job 1, a queue has to be created during submission and it has to be given to the job process API. Job process API will put the messages to the app dev 1 job 1 queue, and the job submit API will be receiving those updates as a listener. Okay, so let's start with that. So this is our client project, right? And this is our server project. So it has received and it has sent the acknowledgement also. Let's see whether the queue is created or not. Yeah, queue is created. Let's wait for the messages to be sent from the server project. Yeah, server has sent the message. Okay, server is sending the messages, but still there is a problem that our middleware is not receiving the messages, right? Let's check the problem in our middleware code. So this is our middleware code, right? So if I go here, this is my listener. There is no problem to receive the message. But if I go here, yeah, here, this is the consumer where we are attaching the listener to the consumer, right? So the one thing which we are missing is we have not started the connection. Okay, so let's do that. Let me restart my client project, and my server is running. That's fine. Clear it out. Okay, I don't have to restart my server because I have not made any changes to the server project. Okay, now Yeah, client is also restarted now with the change. Now let me submit the job again. Yeah, it has received and the acknowledgement too. Let me check. Yeah, the message is there. The SQS is created. So let's wait for it to start sending the messages and receive the messages. See here, app-dev2 job2 started message sent from the server job process API, job submit API. The middleware is keep on receiving the message whatever being pushed. Okay, here we are not continuously polling to the SQS. Instead, we are opening up a listener to the SQS that is actually uh, receiving the messages whenever there is a message in the SQS. Okay, so that's all. Okay, so we are, yeah, see, this is a problem here. Uh, Even though we have received the message already, but we are still continuously getting the message, because even though we have acknowledged the message, right, that is not deleted from the queue. If you go and see here, see the messages in flight is still there as 7. Okay, so this is the queue which we created for this request, right, that was created. So messages in flight is still there. So there is no consumer. I mean, even though they are consumed, right, they are still in the queue. Okay, that's what it is the problem. That's why they're still being retrieved from the client project. So in order to solve this problem, either we have to delete the queue after the acknowledgement, delete the message from the queue after the acknowledgement, or we can, instead of client acknowledgement, right, what we can do, we can also auto acknowledge. So when we do the auto acknowledge, right, what happens, it acknowledges and it also deletes the message that it has acknowledged, okay, from the queue. So let's switch from client acknowledge to auto acknowledge. Okay, okay, let me stop this. Okay, let me delete the queue. Let me delete this queue also. Okay, so now let me resubmit the request, or before that let me restart the client project. Okay, now my client project is also restarted. Where is my server project? Yeah, let me clear this out. Let me maximize this. Let me clear this out. Okay, now let me trigger the request. Okay, so let's wait for it. So submission acknowledgement received. So it is receiving the messages. If I go to queue now, so it's always saying, because it is immediately acknowledging and deleting the messages also. So there will not be any messages in the flight or in the available section, right? So generating reports is completed. So job is also completed. Let's wait for a few seconds if it still retrieves the messages. So it's not retrieving the messages anymore, right? So whatever the auto acknowledgement setup we have done, it is working fine to avoid reading the messages, same message multiple times. Okay. Now what we will do, this is all done, right? We are able to send the messages from SQS, and the message listener is receiving the messages asynchronously from the middleware side. This is all done. Now there is some post processing logic, right, which we have to do whenever there is a message received, or the message receival process, or the job updates are completed, we have to delete the connection to the queue, and also delete the queue itself, right? So what we have to do, we have to first delete connections dot remove, delete the entry from the map that we are maintaining. After that, what we have to do, we have to close the connection as well. I mean, before removing the entry from the connect map, we will close the connection to the queue. That listener, whatever we opened up, right, that should be closed first. After that, we have to remove the entry from the connections map. Later on, at the end, we have to delete the queue as well. Okay. So for that, we have to get the SQS client. So in our AWS client, we have the SQS client, right? Yeah. Here we will write one more method, like to delete the queue. Okay, delete queue. For this, we have to pass the queue name. Okay. Okay. Now here we have to use the AWS SQS API to delete the queue. Okay. SQS client dot yeah, we don't have the SQS client, right? We have to get it from the SQS client method, which we have here in this class. Okay, SQS client dot delete queue. Delete queue, we have to pass delete queue request. Delete queue request. Delete queue request dot builder dot, we have to give something, right, for the queue which we have to delete, that queue URL we have to pass, right? So queue URL, how we will get it? Okay, we can also frame it like this, right? The way we created the queue URL while the job is getting submitted, right? In the same way we can create. Otherwise, there is one method available in the AWS SDK. We can use that method. Okay, public string get queue URL of, if we pass the queue name to it, it will return the queue URL if it exists. Queue URL, queue name we have to pass. Okay, so for that, again we have to get the SQS client dot mm, SQS client. Okay, okay, SQS client dot get queue URL, right? Yeah, for this we have to pass the get queue URL request. Builder dot, for this we have to pass the queue name. Okay, queue name. for which you want to get the queue URL, that we have to pass. Okay, so what is the problem here, we will see, but let me pass that get URL request builder to get queue URL. So still there is a problem here, right? What is that? We'll see. Yeah, get queue URL request. Okay, so this one we have to, whatever it return from here, right? We have to return that. What it returns, get queue URL response dot queue URL. This one we have to return. Okay, so whatever the queue URL get queue URL method returns, right, that we have to pass to delete queue URL request. So the delete queue URL request, and we have to build it. Okay, and this is a method, right? Okay, so for get queue URL we have to pass the queue name. Okay, delete queue request we have to pass it here. Okay, so we are able to delete the queue. We have written a method to delete the queue, right? But we have to call this method from here. Okay, where we have written in AWS client dot what happened, why it is not available. Yeah, because it is not the static method, right? We will also make this get QRL also static. Okay, delete queue of queue name. Okay, so what happens if we do like this? Immediately after the connection start, right, the connection will be, I mean the message listener will continue to listen for SQS messages, but immediately after that it closes the connection, removes the map entry from the map, and deletes the queue as well. So we should not want it, right? What we want is, we want this logic to be executed only after the job is completed, right? So till the time we have to wait for the job wait message to be received from the job process API to job submit API, right? So what we have to do, we have to wait for that. So what we will do, after the start, we will write a method callback in the message listener callback, wait for complete. So this is a method which is going to notify that my job completion message is received from the job process API. Okay, so here I'll write one more method, public void wait for complete. Okay, so what this method is going to do, it just notifies whenever there is a job completion message received. So where we are receiving the job messages from the SQS here, right? So if message body, right, what is that, message body dot equals of job completed, right, then only we have to notify that this method should execute or return something, right? So for that, what we will do in this method, we will write some loop, okay, that will keep on checking, okay, is complete variable. If that variable is true, then only it will come out of it. Okay, so when we have to set this variable to true, only when the job complete message is received. till the time it will be a false. So private void, no, private, we will take a boolean variable and is complete is equal to false. We will also define this as volatile variable. Okay, so that it will be specific to thread. Okay, so that's all. Okay, whenever we are opening up a connection to the listener in this method, right, this will keep on executing. Okay, this will be, I mean, this method will not return, or this method will not break until the job complete message is received in the callback. Okay, so whenever it is received, this method will complete. After that only these three things are going to happen. Okay, so let's try this one now. Let me stop it. uh, Let me restart the client project. Now let me create one more request, app dev 4 job 4. Okay, now I'm doing it. Okay, job request received. Let's see this one. Okay, job 4 is received by, let me delete job 3. Okay, job 3 is deleted now. So let's wait. Okay, this job 4 also should be deleted automatically, because of we have written the code. When the job completed message is received, we should be deleting it, right? It should be deleted by the code, whatever we have written now, right? So generating reports is received. So job completed message is received, right? So let's wait for this one, whether it is going to remove the queue as well or not. Okay, so it is still here. Let's check why it is still here. We are calling it, right? Delete queue is there, so it should be deleted. Okay, maybe it is taking some time. Or is this method not coming out of it? Yeah, there is a problem, because we have some comparison string, right? This is a problem. Okay, now let me stop this again. Let me delete this queue manually, at least now. Okay, good. Now my client is ready to receive the job submit request. Where is my server? Yeah, server is here. Now let me submit the request. This time let me, the reason why I'm giving the different user ID and job name is because uh, with this user ID and job name only we are giving the queue name, we are creating the queue, right? But we are, meanwhile, I mean, when we are deleting the queue, it will take at least 60 seconds to recreate the queue with the same name. So as we are trying out to create, send the request multiple times immediately after the deletion, right? In order to avoid that error or bypass that error, I'm giving the different queue name. Otherwise you can give the same queue name or the same input to create the queue with the same name. Okay, if you are trying out after 60 seconds, that's the AWS limitation, that we have to wait for 60 seconds to recreate the queue with the same name. Okay, okay, fine. Now let me send the request. Yeah, request is received. Let's see whether it sends the acknowledgement or not. Yeah, it has received the acknowledgement. Now let's wait for the messages. So the messages are coming up. So the queue is still here. So the job completed message is received. So it should be deleted in few seconds. We'll see. Yeah, it will not be deleted because still there is a problem with the comparison string which we are using, because we have written like this, right? So instead of the equals ignore case, I'll check for it, the job completed message, the index of it. Okay. Now let me delete the queue again. Let me start my client project. This is my server project. Now here, let me send the request now with the 6. Okay, let's see. This time it should be successfully deleted after the processing of the messages from the middleware side. Okay, queue is there. Good. Started fetching input data, executing db query 1, db query 2, 3, generating reports. Okay, job completed message received. Yeah, it is shutting down the uh, executor, I mean the thread which we have created, right? That is being shut down. Now let's see whether the queue is also deleted. Yeah. So this itself is a proof that our wait for complete method and the queue deletion, connection close, all those things are working fine after the messages are successfully retrieved from in the middleware, which are received from the SQS that are put by the job process API. Okay, so we have seen in detail implementation of what we thought of discussing today. The messages that are being put by the job process API, we are opening up a JMS message listener to that SQS and reading the messages, and we also have seen the SQS delete process. Okay, so that's all for today. We will meet in the next video in this video series. Thank you for watching. Please give it a like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.